keep that straight, but I'm just giving you a heads up now. So let's talk about formation. How do we go about forming a corporation? How do corporations get formed? Well, this is a 3-step process, all right? And of course, it's going to be slightly different from state to state. Every state is going to have its own forms, its own procedures, its own fees that have to be paid, and that sort of thing. But generally speaking, no matter where you are, you're going to follow some variation of these 3 steps, all right? And step 1 being filing the Articles of Incorporation. Articles of Incorporation is a form. It's a simple form, really. There's not a lot of information that needs to be contained on it because it's just the document that gets the ball rolling. When we get to talking about bylaws, we'll talk about something more specific. But Articles of Incorporation sounds so formal. Sounds like you have to have the whole thing drawn up and done then. You really don't. There's only a few things that need to be included. All right. First of all, we need to have a name. The corporation needs to have a name, and that name has to include either corp or incorporated. So a lot of times you'll see a name like Main Street Coffee Inc. period. Main Street Coffee Incorporated. All right, they're letting you know that they're a corporation. General Electric's official name is not General Electric or GE, it's the General Electric Corporation. They chose not to do the INC thing, they chose to go with the more formal corporation. Whatever. However you want to do that, it's fine, it just needs to be in there somewhere. Second, you have to include in your Articles of Incorporation, you have to include the number of shares that are authorized. What you're basically telling the state when you file your Articles of Incorporation is that here's how many pieces this company is going to be broken into, how many pieces of ownership. All right, we're going to talk about shares and what this term means, just for a second, because it's the first time we've mentioned it, and I want you to know the difference between, because you hear about this all the time. You hear about stock, and if you especially you're all business students, so I assume you at least keep an eye on some type of market. Whether it be New York Stock Exchange or commodities or NASDAQ or whatever, or at least you're familiar with what those things are. So you hear about stock and shares of stock. So right off the bat, I want you to know what we're talking about. All right, a share is a portion of ownership. All right, in a corporation. So when I say that you're going to be informing the state how many pieces the company is broken into, I mean that quite literally. How many pieces of the pie are out there? How many different people own a share of the company? So that they can be aware of how spread out it is. Closely held corporations, very low amounts of shareholders. Widely held corporations can have thousands or even millions of shareholders. Obviously, if there's only 5 shares authorized, that means if you own a share, you own 20% of the company. If there are 1 million shares authorized, owning 1 share means you own 1/1,000,000th of the company. Depending on what kind of company you're talking about, 1/1,000,000th might still be extremely valuable, but chances are, you're going to want to be in the 1/5. Because especially if you believe in the profitability and growth potential of the company that you're a shareholder for. So shareholders, when we use that term shareholders, these are the owners of the corporation, right? We've had sole proprietors, partners, and now shareholders. They're the same. These are the people who own the company. Now the only difference is there's going to be a lot of shareholders, and because of the nature, well, they don't have to be a lot. We just talked about how there sometimes are very few. But because of the nature of corporations, whether there's a lot or a few, shareholders can change very quickly and very easily. That's one of the advantages of this. We can shift around shares of ownership between different shareholders and sell them. Sell those shares easily, transferring ownership from one person to another, from one owner to bring in a new owner. And it's really simple to do that. And that's one of the advantages to having a corporation. Okay, so we've got our articles of incorporation. We're including our name, we're including the number of shares, and third, we're going to name a registered agent. All right. Just really quickly, a registered agent, I think we've talked about this in the context of some other business forms, but I'll just mention it again. When you incorporate, you're going to name a person and give contact information for that person in the state where you're incorporating, where any sort of formal notice or any official correspondence from the state can be delivered, so that when it's received at that location, it has been received by the corporation. So you can name one of the directors of a corporation as your agent, or an attorney, somebody's attorney, if the corporation has a corporate attorney, somewhere. But you don't have to. You can name anybody you want, but it's at your peril if you name, some nobody, because when that person receives an official notice about your business, them having it in their hand is as good as you having it in your hand if you're the corporation. So making sure that you're picking a responsible registered agent who understands the responsibility they're taking on is a big part of that. I'm sure we've already covered registered agents, so I won't go too deep into the point. Lastly, on your articles of incorporation, you're going to give the name and address of each incorporator or director, and we need to kind of discuss those terms, incorporator or director in this case. All right, let's talk about incorporators first. All right, what is an incorporator and who may be an incorporator? All right, first of all, anybody can be an incorporator. You don't have to be a shareholder, or you don't have to have any other role in the business whatsoever. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of attorneys who offer this as a service. All right, so what does an incorporator do is probably the more appropriate question to understand exactly what we're dealing with. An incorporator is somebody who takes on the role of helping a corporation through the formation process. So they come on board and they act in a leadership role for the corporation. Basically, they're acting as a director during the formation period. Now again, they don't have to be a shareholder, they don't have to be a director, they don't have to be interested in doing anything after the corporation is properly formed. They're not committing to anything except being involved during the formation process. There's a lot of money to be made if you know what you're doing and can help a company get incorporated quickly and efficiently, and by that I mean for not a lot of money, and properly. There are real serious implications to messing this up, and as one of my former bosses used to always say, there's 1,000 ways to do this almost right. So having good incorporators can be a big asset for you. Once the business is fully formed, an incorporator may stay on and take a role on as a director. All right, directors